Okay, so Avaya just announced, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, announced the end of sale of the S8800, which that happens when we start seeing these servers transitioning, and they're not made by Avaya, they're made by either, in that case, the 8800 was the IBM server. But this is interesting, not so much that the end of selling that, but how they're introducing the new guys. This time around, there is no S8900. Avaya is not branding this next generation of servers. So in fact, they're the servers that you would buy from HP. Specifically, it's the HP DL360, the G7 version, or in some flavors, it's the Dell that's using the R610. And again, they're not putting an Avaya logo on it. They're not doing any of that stuff. And you really have to start to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? And to me, this follows a concept that I had known for a long time of as server generalization. It started a long time ago. Really, kind of the first phase of this was release 4, when Avaya offered up an option for software duplication. And the only reason that's interesting is because before that, everything was hardware duplication. Hardware duplication required these DAL boards that had to sit inside the server that were very specific to the bus and the architecture of the server plugged into them. And so bottom line, it was a pretty severe limiter in terms of just allowing you to use any server imaginable. And that's okay, because prior to that, Avaya really wanted you to think of these servers, Avaya Communication Manager, as an appliance. They didn't want you to kind of have to think of it as an actual open-ended server, a common server that that you buy off the shelf. But this next transition marks a very interesting phase that Avaya is moving to, where the first phase of this is to start to remind you that, hey, these are just standard servers that you would buy. Now, this first next series of them is really going to come down to, you still have to buy it from Avaya. You can't go out and buy it from your local HP vendor or from your business partner or whatever. You have to buy these specific servers from Avaya. But again, if you play out this scenario of what they're trying to move to, of again, away from an appliance model and more into this common server architecture, they're really gearing up for virtualization, which also has happened. We've had the mid-market business template for a couple of years now, and now with release 6, every version of Communication Manager, again, whether it's feature server or evolution server, we've talked about that in previous shows, all of that stuff rides in a thing called Zen, which is Avaya, it's an open standard version of virtualization. Avaya puts a name to it called System Platform, but it's virtualization. The idea is, just like SIP, we use that as the universal coupler, I can start using this virtualization engine also as a universal coupler, where Avaya doesn't have to rewrite their code 50 million times, and every time HP decides to change their servers, or every time Dell decides to change their servers, which they all do at least every 12 months, maybe 18 months, and so we have to rewrite everything every single time. Well, if I can write it to Zen and let Zen be responsible for how do I abstract that hardware and go back to the other, whatever hardware it's plugged into, it becomes easier. So again, play this scenario out. I'm seeing that Avaya is going virtual. Again, that's virtual in an appliance mode today, but we're absolutely going to see that structure move forward, where there is going to very soon come a day where you want to buy Communication Manager, here's your disk. Put it on your server. We're not here today, but you have to understand the phases that have been happening, the phases that we're in, the phases that just started, as we move forward. So common server architecture, pretty cool thing. You better be checking this baby out.
They call me Dr. Love. I've got the cure you're thinking of.
Okay, now, the first part of your question is actually pretty easy. The second part is quite a bit tougher. So let me take the easy one first. What's the difference between H.248 and H.323 primary surge timers? Think when you think H.248, you're talking about gateways. So I want you to think G700, G450, G430, that kind of stuff. And on the H.323 timers, we're talking phones, so IP phones. Now, a primary search timer is meant to separate what should these devices connect to on the PBX, whether it's CLANs and or processor Ethernet, depending on how you're doing it and what you have configured. What should I be connecting to when everything's going great and okay? Give me options for backup, but everything's normal, everything's okay. And at what point do I fail over to the survivable servers, the disaster recovery kinds of stuff? And the primary search timer is set for that. The hard part here is I can't tell you what to set them to because it depends on a whole lot of other variables. For example, I know for a fact that an H.323 phone, an IP phone, can't register to a survivable server that isn't controlling DSP resources, which means I need the H.248 primary search timer to be set to a smaller number than the H.323 timer. The gateway has to fail over first, then the phones can come in behind it. Now, what you set the gateway timer to totally depends on when are those survivable servers going to become available. If you're talking ESS, I'm talking a minimum of 2 minutes now with release 5.2. Before that, it's a minimum of 3 minutes. If it's an LSP, I could probably have that back relatively soon. But again, I have to wait till it's controlling a gateway. So again, it depends on what those timers are. Bottom line, there's a whole lot of things involved. That's why we call it engineering. But the key is to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. Oh, hey! I have got the David Collins from Audiocodes, VP of Sales. You're kind of a big deal.
Not only in my own mind.
Well, you're one of the guys that I think of all the time when I'm like, who would know this topic and the relevance and all that kind of stuff? You're
Three Stooges trivia.
I wasn't going to go there. So Audiocodes, I'm a big fan of Audiocodes. We've talked about it on the show all the time, talking about, clearly everybody's moving SIP, everybody's doing some amazing things, but we know that not everybody is 100% SIP. They need a little bit of SIP to TDM action.
Right, and that's kind of where we come in.
That's amazing.
Just try to help get people there a little quicker, a little easier, a little less expense, a little less pain, and keep the legacy environment in place. Maybe just bolt on some SIP rather than have to do everything kind of all at once with a forklift, and be able to take some cost savings out immediately, and be able to use those cost savings to drive the applications that are right on top of SIP.
But I mean, the nice, easy aspect of this is your existing infrastructure has T1s, it has TDM kind of stuff, maybe DS3s, right? And you want to get into SIP. I mean, that's your two interfaces. It's trunks on one side and SIP on the other, and it just magically does the translation.
Yeah, so we just drop those gateways right in front, take the SIP trunks in, do this. We can do session border controllers, so you can provide the security. We do the translation, the transcoding back into the TDM. So we're not doing any upgrades to the PBX necessarily, and we're interfacing with whatever's out there. We're interfacing with, and then we can still SIP enable. So we're bringing the SIP trucks in, don't have to change anything else on the PBX, and just start experiencing savings.
So let's talk about a real specific example. We've talked on the show about Skype and some pretty cool things there. And one of the first thought is, I have to be SIP ready. I have to be SIP enabled to be able to bring in Skype.
Yeah.
And you're saying no. You don't.
No. So
tell us about that.
Yeah. So the Skype story is a great story. I mean, really, Skype is a SIP trunk. I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of other stuff that goes along with it, but from an enterprise perspective, Skype is nothing more than a SIP trunk. So what we're doing is we're bringing that into our gateway, and without doing anything to the back end.
I don't need session manager. I don't need SES.
You're talking about like a $4,500 gateway typically.
Okay.
I mean, and so the first place we did this several months ago when we were working with Skype. And before they certified us, we did a proof of concept with them, and we were working with one of their customers. The customer had some international employees, a number of different offices. Their first month's cost savings was $8,500.
Right off the bat.
$8,500 first month. Yeah. Their total cost in to get this thing done, including services, was like $10,000.
So you're talking a month and a half.
5-week ROI. So I mean, in terms of no-brainers, and Skype, I've got it on my cell phone. Any smartphone today has a Skype on it. It's really, from that perspective, it's very cool. And it's really just a classic example of how to use SIP.
Right.
I mean, it's just using SIP.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty cool. And we're seeing all kinds of customers that, boy, we get webinars that get packed when we talk SIP. So customers are real into it. The biggest problem that every customer has is to say, well, how do I get from where I am today with, it's all TDM, it's all T1s, it's all very kind of old school dial tone, and they want to move in that direction. But if I could push the fast forward button and just instantly be there, I'd be in great shape. But they struggle with how to get there. And this is a great transition product.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's one of those situations where just come in, just drop the gateway in place. Don't change the back end. Don't mess with any of that stuff yet. There may be opportunity for you to do that in the future, but start with just getting SIP enabled and start saving money initially. And now you've got a platform for SIP applications, right? Using the existing environment.
I always kind of think of, I know SIP isn't always plug and play, but it's kind of almost the universal translator.
Right.
There's some pretty cool things you can do with that for making something that is technically, I'd have to tie it into a specific brand or a specific product, but say, just make it SIP and I can plug it into anything.
I think what we'll see is over the next coming months, a lot of developers are using SIP as the common denominator. So instead of having to do the integration of all these very disparate systems, some of which were very proprietary, some were kind of moving proprietary, they just go SIP.
Well, modular messaging is a great example of that.
Exactly.
In 5.2, you wanted to go current release, it's SIP. Well, those people that don't have SIP, you just make it
using
an Audiocodes gateway.
There you go.
Oh, that's awesome. Dave, thank you so much for joining. I'd love to have you back again.
Pleasure.
I always enjoy our conversations.
Any chance I get, I'll come in, and I love the studio.
It's great. It's amazing. It's pretty cool. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks. So a lot of people have been asking me, is it true Avaya is getting back into the data business? I'm like, didn't we see this all over again with Cajun? And sure enough, Avaya is back in. And even I was wondering, really? Are we seriously? I got to tell you guys, I'm intrigued with, once Avaya acquired the enterprise assets of Nortel, that's one of the things that they got as part of this. And I don't want to downplay what Avaya did with Cajun, all the way back to the Lucent technology days. Cajun, the P330 is what brought us into the G700, which led us ultimately to where we are today with the G450 and the G430. So again, think H.248 gateways. That came from the Cajun days. But you're right, it never turned into any kind of data networking play, nowhere near in the data center. But now all of a sudden with the current Avaya data portfolio, they're here and they're big. I got to tell you, I did some comparisons. I'm going to have marketing put a little thing right here, somewhere about there, that's going to show, it's called like a Landcat tool that is going to help you compare what some of the common products are out in the marketplace from Avaya's competitors, what the equivalent is on the Avaya side, and then do a total cost of ownership. And again, that means how much did I pay up front? How much is my energy utilization? Because I've seen comparisons from other competing switches, very common ones that even I have, and compare that to an Avaya equivalent. We're talking a quarter of the power usage. Guys, that is huge. That adds up real fast when you're talking those kind of numbers. We're talking, 10 times the switching fabric capacity. We're talking, in a lot of cases, a third to a half of the cost of the maintenance and the ongoing total cost of ownership. It's a really big deal. And when we start talking about VINA, which is Avaya's virtual enterprise networking architecture, we're doing some pretty amazing things here. You really need to check it out. You guys cannot ignore this. When I'm out talking to customers and traveling around this great country of ours, you'd think the biggest question that I get asked is something related to SIP or Avaya Aura, but no. It's actually, Dave, how is it that you look so cool? How is it that those shirts you wear are so amazing? Well, Turns out I get all my shirts at daddios.com. I'm a big online shopping kind of guy, you know, and I found that I'm a big fan of the retro camp shirt. You know, I'm Charlie Sheen, we've got Bobby Chan's got a line, Steady, all of these kind of great lines for this kind of attire. Daddios.com has them, and so I buy all my stuff there. Well, it turns out they're as big of a fan of our show as we are of their website. Great guys, great people, awesome service, but they're giving us a discount. If you go to www.daddios.com and use the promotion code of COUNT10, you are going to get 10% off your order. So again, I'm a big fan. You should kind of check these guys out. Daddios.com. Love them. What happens when all hell breaks loose? What am I going to do then? Craptastic. All you got to do is sound confident. I got nothing. The Love Boat. Seriously, tell me I'm not McLovin. Well played. Yeah. Dang it.